Hello everyone. Have you ever been in a room, maybe at a dinner party, maybe in a coffee shop, and felt that sudden, inexplicable shift in the air because someone's eyes found yours? Not the casual glance we all exchange 100 times a day. No, I'm talking about the kind of look that makes the rest of the world fade into soft focus. The kind of look that feels like a question you've been waiting to hear your whole life, and at the same time, an answer you didn't know you were searching for. In that moment, you don't just see her, you feel seen, and it's as if something ancient, something primal, is quietly awakening between the two of you. That single moment of eye contact can hold curiosity, challenge, desire, even an unspoken dare. But here's the thing most men miss when a woman looks at you like that. It's never just a look, it's a doorway. The question is, do you walk through it, or do you look away, pretending you didn't notice, and let the moment dissolve into nothing? Today we're going to explore why you should never ignore that look. Because understanding the language of her eyes isn't about playing games, it's about opening yourself to connection, intimacy, and the kind of magnetic presence that makes her remember you long after you've left the room. You know, there's something almost unfair about how powerful eye contact can be. In a world obsessed with words, we forget that the deepest conversations often happen in silence. Think about the moments in your life when someone's gaze made you feel something. It could have been decades ago, and yet you can still recall the exact way it landed on you. There's a reason for that. The eyes don't just see, they reveal. And when a woman looks at you in a certain way, it's not random, it's a message. The only question is whether you can read it. Now, I'm not talking about overanalyzing every glance from every passerby. Not every look is an invitation. But there are certain moments when the quality of her gaze changes the atmosphere between you. And if you're over 30, chances are you've experienced it more than once. But maybe you brushed it off, told yourself it was nothing, or didn't know what to do with it. That's what we're going to change today. Imagine this: you're sitting at a table in a busy cafe. The hum of voices blends into the background. Your coffee is cooling in front of you. Across the room, a woman you've never spoken to turns her head. Your eyes meet. It's brief, maybe 2 seconds, but those 2 seconds stretch like warm honey. You can almost feel her attention settling on you. It's not rushed, it's not distracted, it's deliberate. And here's the part most men miss. What happens next is everything. Some men look away instantly, almost embarrassed to have been caught. Others try to hold the gaze but end up staring too hard, crossing that invisible line from intrigue into discomfort. And then there are the rare few who understand how to receive that look, how to meet it with presence, with curiosity, without trying to control it. Those are the men who leave a lasting impression. Eye contact, in its truest form, is not a performance. It's not about winning the moment or forcing her to feel something. It's about being fully there, without flinching. A woman will notice how you handle that small moment because, to her, it reveals so much about you. Your confidence, your openness, your willingness to connect. There's a subtle difference between looking at someone and looking into someone. Looking at is easy. It's just direction. Looking into requires that you let yourself be seen in return. And for many men, that's the scary part. We're taught to project strength, control, certainty. But the kind of eye contact that makes a woman lean in, even from across the room, is born from something else entirely. A willingness to stand in your truth without the armor. Think of it this way: when you look into her eyes, you're not trying to take something from her. You're not scanning for signs of interest like a hunter checking for tracks. You're offering your attention, your awareness, without demand. That's rare, and when it's genuine, she feels it instantly. Now, let's talk about what this really signals to a woman. When she looks at you and you meet her gaze with calm presence, you're communicating that you're comfortable with intimacy, even in a small dose. You're showing her you don't shy away from connection, and you're not scrambling to fill the silence with noise. This doesn't mean you need to be intense or overly serious. In fact, sometimes the most captivating eye contact is paired with the slightest, almost imperceptible smile, signal that says, "I see you, I'm here." There's also an element of timing. Eye contact is not a stare down, it's a dance. You enter, you hold, you release. Like music, the pauses matter as much as the notes. Too quick and you seem unsure. Too long and it can feel invasive. The sweet spot is when the look feels shared, when both of you are aware that something has passed between you without it needing to be named. But here's the part that trips up a lot of men. They assume that if she looks away, the moment is over. Not necessarily. In fact, a woman who glances away and then looks back is often testing the waters. She's giving you a second chance to meet her where she is. This is one of those unspoken invitations you should never ignore. I've seen this dynamic play out countless times in my work. A woman will describe the man she couldn't stop thinking about, not because he was the most handsome or the most charming, but because in that moment when their eyes met, he was present. She felt it, and in that presence, she saw a glimpse of a man who could meet her on equal ground. If you've ever wondered why some men can walk into a room and draw attention without saying a word, this is part of it. They understand the quiet power of being fully there, and they let their eyes speak that truth before their mouths ever open. So the first thing to understand, the first step in decoding that look, is this: it's not about technique, it's about presence. It's about letting her see that you're grounded, that you're not rushing to the next thing, that you can hold her attention without clinging to it. When a woman feels that from you, the conversation, spoken or unspoken, has already begun. And here's the beautiful thing: once you start noticing these moments and responding with presence, you'll begin to realize how many opportunities you've been walking past without even knowing. When you begin to notice the way a woman looks at you, you'll quickly discover that not all looks are created equal. Some carry the warmth of an open door, others have the caution of a half-closed window. The art is in being able to tell the difference. Not so you can pounce, but so you can meet the moment with the right energy. You see, the eyes are not neutral, they're storytellers. They betray hesitation, reveal desire, flash with curiosity, and soften with trust. They can be a question mark, an exclamation point, or a quiet ellipsis. And while the eyes are powerful on their own, the way they interact with the rest of her body tells you even more. Imagine she looks at you, her gaze lingers, and there's a softness in the way her mouth rests. The corners might hint at a smile, even if it's not fully formed. Her body remains oriented toward you, or at least not away from you. That look says, I'm open, I'm curious. You can approach. It's not an invitation to declare undying love. It's a green light for a small step closer, a word, a shared moment. Now contrast that with another kind of look. Her eyes land on you and stay a second too long, but her body is angled away. There's tension in her jaw, her expression guarded. That's not the moment to press forward. It might be curiosity mixed with something else, evaluation, distraction, even uncertainty. Reading this accurately isn't about labeling her interest, it's about respecting her pace. There's also the electric look. You'll know it because it feels like the air between you just tightened, like there's an invisible thread pulling both of you into sharper focus. This is the gaze that's often brief, 2, maybe 3 seconds, because it's almost too charged to sustain. When you catch this one, your best move is to meet it with steady presence and then be the first to release just slightly. This isn't a retreat, it's an acknowledgement that the spark is there, and you're confident enough not to grab at it. But here's the nuance: most men over 30 have been conditioned to think they need to do something immediately with that energy. Crack a joke, comment on the moment, start a conversation right away. What you need to realize is that sometimes the most magnetic thing you can do is nothing. To let the look exist, to let it live in the shared space between you without forcing it into action. This creates tension, the good kind, the kind that lingers. And we have to talk about that tension because it's one of the most misunderstood forces in attraction. A lot of men try to eliminate it, thinking that making her feel comfortable means smoothing out every ripple of energy between you. But women aren't drawn to the absence of tension. They're drawn to the right kind of tension. The kind where she feels both safe and slightly intrigued, where she wonders, what would happen if I leaned in? Eye contact, when handled with care, can create exactly that. Sometimes her look will carry layers, playfulness under restraint, interest under caution. That's why you can't just look at the eyes and ignore the rest of her presence. Is she fidgeting with something while holding your gaze? That can be a sign of nervous excitement. Does she glance at your mouth after meeting your eyes? That's often unconscious, but it's a strong indicator of attraction. I've worked with couples where the entire dynamic shifted the moment one partner began to truly see the other. Not just look, but see, and in dating, this applies tenfold. When you show a woman that you can read her gaze with respect, without trying to own or control it, she feels understood on a level that bypasses the mind and goes straight to the body. Here's something else to understand: the quality of her gaze often mirrors the quality of your presence. If you're distracted in your head or projecting insecurity, her look will be fleeting, cautious, even guarded. But if you are grounded, rooted in yourself, not grasping for her approval, she'll often mirror that steadiness back to you. In that sense, eye contact is a feedback loop. What you bring to it shapes what you get from it. And there's a deeper layer here. Eye contact is not just about attraction, it's about recognition. When a woman looks at you and you meet her gaze fully, there's a moment where both of you are saying, without words, I see you, I acknowledge you. In a world where most of us feel invisible far too often, that simple recognition is powerful. When you start to attune yourself to these subtleties, something shifts in the way you move through the world. You begin to notice looks you might have missed before, not because women suddenly started looking at you differently, but because you've slowed down enough to receive it. And once you do, you start responding differently, not with desperation, not with rehearsed lines, but with genuine connection. The truth is, a woman can tell when you're chasing the validation of her look versus when you're simply open to the connection it offers. The former feels like a transaction, the latter feels like an exchange, and it's the exchange that leaves an imprint. The moment her eyes meet yours, there's a spark of possibility. But possibility is delicate. It can bloom into connection or vanish like mist if you mishandle it. The men who turn that spark into something lasting aren't the ones who rush in. They're the ones who know how to let the energy breathe. Think of it like the opening notes of a song. You don't jump to the chorus. You let the melody build. You let the rhythm carry you forward. Eye contact works in much the same way. It's the opening note of a conversation that doesn't need words to begin. And if you handle it right, it plants a seed of curiosity in her mind. Who is this man? Here's where most men over 30 have an advantage if they choose to use it. You've lived enough life to know that not every connection has to be chased at full speed. You understand that attraction isn't about conquering. It's about creating space for something to unfold. So when her gaze lingers, you don't leap, you lean in gently with presence. One of the most powerful things you can do in that moment is to let your expression reflect a subtle shift, just enough for her to notice, but not so much that you're putting on a performance. Maybe the corner of your mouth lifts in a quiet acknowledgement. Maybe your eyebrows raise slightly, as if you're privately amused. These micro expressions tell her you're not just looking, you're seeing. And more importantly, you're reacting to her. This is where the magnetic pull begins. When she feels that her presence has an impact on you, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you're genuinely engaged, she becomes more invested in the exchange. She starts to wonder what else you might notice about her. And that curiosity is the foundation of attraction. Now, let's talk about pacing. If you try to lock eyes for too long, you can tip the balance from magnetic to uncomfortable. The real magic is in the rhythm. Connect, break away, reconnect. It's like breathing. You don't inhale forever. You exhale, you pause, you inhale again. The breaks in eye contact create anticipation, and anticipation is where desire lives. There's a subtle game you can play here, but it's not a game in the manipulative sense. It's the art of inviting her to come toward you. Let's say you're in conversation, and her gaze meets yours. Hold it for just a moment longer than expected, then let it go, not with disinterest, but with the ease of someone who has nothing to prove. A beat later, look back. That small gesture says, I'm here, and I'm not chasing you, but I'm not ignoring you either. Women pick up on this more than you think. In fact, in many cases, she'll test the connection by seeing if you'll meet her eyes again. When you do, and you do it without tension or over-eagerness, you're telling her, I can hold this space with you. That's rare, and it's deeply attractive. Another thing to understand, the way you hold yourself while making eye contact is just as important as the eye contact itself. If your body is tight, your shoulders hunched, or your movements jerky, you're sending mixed signals. But if your body is open, your posture relaxed, and your movements unhurried, you're telling her, without words, that you're grounded and self-assured. I've watched men transform their dating lives by shifting this one thing, staying physically still in moments of shared eye contact, not frozen, still. Stillness communicates that you're not in a rush to escape the moment. You're not looking for an exit. You're comfortable right here with her in this exact second. And that's intoxicating. Of course, you can't fake this. If your stillness comes from a place of overthinking, am I doing this right? How long should I hold her gaze? She'll feel that too. The key is to actually be present, to notice her eyes. Yes, but also to notice the light in the room, the sound of her voice if you're speaking, the warmth of the space between you. When you anchor yourself in the sensory details of the moment, your presence becomes undeniable. And here's something a lot of men overlook. Once you've built that initial spark with eye contact, you don't need to fill the next moment with clever lines. Silence, when shared comfortably, can be more seductive than any words. It's in the quiet that she gets to feel you, not just hear you. It's in the quiet that she can wonder about you. And the little wondering goes a long way. When you can meet her eyes and let her feel both your strength and your ease, you're sending one of the most powerful signals a man can send. I am safe, but I am not tame. That combination, security with an edge, is what draws a woman in and keeps her intrigued. When that first exchange of eyes has passed, the temptation for many men is to let the magic evaporate. You get the look, you feel the spark, and then you retreat into small talk, letting the moment dissolve into something ordinary. But here's the truth, that moment is not the peak. It's the doorway, and what you do next determines whether she steps through it with you. The energy of eye contact isn't meant to stay locked in the eyes. It's meant to travel through your voice, your gestures, The way you listen and the way you move. Think of it like a thread that begins between your eyes and hers. Your task is to let that thread weave into everything else you do, so it's never broken, only deepened. Start with your voice. After a charged moment of eye contact, speak in a way that matches the intimacy you've just shared. That doesn't mean whispering like you're in a conspiracy, but it does mean softening your tone, slowing your words, and letting small pauses hang without rushing to fill them. Those pauses tell her you're not afraid of space, that you trust the connection enough to let it breathe. And when you do speak, listen to how she responds. Is her voice slightly warmer? Is she leaning in a fraction closer? These are subtle but important shifts, and they tell you she's not just hearing you, she's feeling you. Meeting her in that space isn't about proving your wit or showing off. It's about creating an atmosphere where she feels drawn to reveal more of herself. From there, let your body language echo what your eyes started. Keep your shoulders open and your body angled toward her, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that communicates focus. If you're standing, don't lock your feet like you're bolted to the ground. Let your stance feel natural, as though you're rooted but ready to move closer if she does. Touch, when it enters, should never break the spell. It should extend it. This doesn't mean reaching for her too soon. In fact, often the most electric form of touch in these early moments is the one that almost happens. A hand that hovers near hers on the table, a brush of your shoulder as you lean in to hear her better. These are like ripples from the initial stone of eye contact. They carry the same energy, just in a different form. But perhaps the most important part of sustaining the connection is how you listen. Most men listen to reply. Few listen to receive. After she's looked at you in that way, she's offering you a small truth, her openness. When you listen in a way that makes her feel safe and valued, you turn that moment into something she'll remember, not just as attraction, but as connection. Here's a secret: when a woman feels both seen and heard, she begins to associate your presence with the feeling of being understood, and that feeling is magnetic. It draws her back, not because you're performing, but because you've created a space where she can be herself without defense. Don't underestimate the role of curiosity here. Real curiosity, not the kind that fires off a series of surface-level questions, but the kind that notices small details and invites her to share more. You might say, when you looked at me earlier, it felt like you were about to say something but didn't. It's a playful observation, but it lets her know you're attuned to her, that you notice what most people overlook, and all the while keep returning to the eyes, not in an unbroken stare, but in moments. Let your gaze rest on hers when you ask something meaningful. Hold it when you share something vulnerable. Drop it briefly when you want to create anticipation, then bring it back. Each return is like a quiet reminder: I'm still here, I'm still with you. What happens over time is that the initial spark matures into a kind of private current between you. The room may be full of people, but there's a sense that the two of you are in a conversation only you can hear. That's not created through grand gestures. It's built in these micro moments of consistent, intentional presence. And here's the beauty of it: by sustaining that thread of energy, you make her feel like the connection wasn't a fluke. Too often, an initial moment of attraction fizzles because it's never fed. But when you keep it alive, gently, steadily, you give her a reason to keep leaning in. Attraction begins in a flash, but intimacy, real intimacy, grows in the spaces that follow: the look, the energy, the thread between you. These are only the opening lines of a much longer story. What makes that story unforgettable is not how quickly it moves forward, but how deeply it settles into the fabric of both your lives. You see, when a woman looks at you in that way, she's not just acknowledging your presence, she's testing the ground between you. She's asking, without words, can you hold this? Can you meet me here without breaking the spell? And when you do, she begins to trust that the connection isn't fragile. Let's be honest. Many men mistake that first charged moment for the whole experience. They chase the spark but forget to tend to the flame. The real skill lies in carrying the same energy you had in those first seconds into every interaction that follows. Whether you're in conversation, walking side by side, or sitting in silence together, silence, in fact, is one of your greatest allies here. The moments when you don't speak are just as telling as the moments when you do. If you can hold her gaze in a pause without it feeling heavy, you communicate that you're not afraid of her presence, that you don't need to fill every gap with noise to keep her interested. This creates a rhythm between you, a balance of expression and restraint, and that rhythm becomes the emotional heartbeat of the connection. It tells her, I can be with you in stillness, I can be with you in movement, and in both, I'm here. Over time, those looks, the ones that once lasted seconds, start to carry history. They become shorthand for shared memories, private jokes, moments when words were unnecessary. She can glance at you from across a crowded room and know exactly what you're thinking, and you can do the same. That's when you've moved beyond attraction into intimacy. But here's the secret: this level of connection doesn't come from trying to lock her in. It comes from giving her the freedom to keep choosing you in every moment. When she feels that she can breathe in your presence, that she can be fully herself without you trying to possess her, she'll meet your eyes not just with attraction, but with trust. And trust changes everything. A trusting gaze is softer, more open, but it carries the weight of something earned. It says, you've shown me who you are, and I'm safe here. That is the kind of look that stays with you long after the night ends. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this: never underestimate the power of being fully present in a moment of eye contact. It is not a trick. It is not a move. It is an offering. Your attention, your awareness, your willingness to let her see you without masks. That's what women remember. Not the exact words you said, not the clever line you rehearsed, but the feeling of being truly seen. So the next time a woman looks at you like that, when her eyes hold yours and something in the air shifts, don't look away out of fear and don't rush in out of hunger. Just be there. Let it land. Let it lie between you for a breath longer than is comfortable. That's where the magic happens. And when she walks away, or when the moment naturally shifts into conversation, carry that same energy forward. Make it the undercurrent of your voice, the quiet strength in your body, the attentive curiosity in your questions. If you can do that, you'll find that one look can be the beginning of something far richer than you imagined. Because in the end, the eyes are not just windows to the soul, they are invitations. And the men who understand how to answer that invitation with presence, with steadiness, with genuine openness are the men she remembers, not just for a night, but for years, sometimes even for a lifetime.